Hi, and welcome back to the Ingrain Workshop. In today's video, we're going to be installing a 1/2-inch plywood on the ceiling of the workshop. Prior to installing the ceiling, we're going to take and apply a whitewash stain finish to the plywood, and then we're going to install it. Once we get it installed, we're going to come back and spray probably a water-based polyurethane coat on it just to seal it. But for today's video, we're just going to be whitewashing it and getting it installed. So let's get started. Okay, so I've installed the first ceiling panel, and I wanted to show you the details. And also, I was originally planning on installing a full 4x8 sheet, but because the method in which I'm installing it, I'm able to actually cut the 4x8 sheet in half and install half a sheet at a time. Makes it a lot easier for me. I don't have to lift up a full 4x8 sheet of 1/2-inch plywood. And I'm able just to lift up a half a sheet. But let me show you the detail that I'm talking about. So you can see the panel that's installed. I'm actually installing these panels on top of the bottom cord of the roof truss. So because I'm doing it that way, I'm able to cut the plywood and make a joint there that you'll never see. And then once the ceiling's up, I'm going to come back on the bottom cord of the truss and install a faux beam to hide the truss. So the joint will never be visible. So it definitely is a plus for me. That way I'm only having to install a half a sheet of plywood at a time versus a full sheet. And on this side, I just fastened it to this ripped 2x4 nailer that I had installed in a previous video, and that again was just to screw that end of the plywood, which ties into the T111 siding. And then you'll also see I had to drill a 1-inch hole in the ceiling panel to allow for the Romex electrical wiring to come through. That particular Romex is the light switch that's going to control the lights that are on a 3-way switch. Okay, so I just wanted to show you how I'm fastening the ceiling panels up in the attic. So what I'm doing is I'm just using some metal screws, and I'm screwing them every 12 inches into the top of the bottom cord of the truss, and I'm doing that on both sides. Then I've made a story stick that I've cut with a 45-degree angle beveled out on one end, just in case there's some welds at the where the vertical truss meets the bottom cord of the truss. This way I can get a more accurate measurement, and then the top is resting flush up against the vertical member of the truss. And then I can just mark my location of where the plywood needs to be. Now, this stick is not 48 inches. The tubing, the center tubing of the truss is 2 1/4 inches. So the center line is 1 1/8 inches. So I've taken 48 inches minus 1 1/8 inches, and that's the length I've made my stick. This way I can be consistent all the way down as I'm putting in the 2x4 panels. That way I'll have a flush plumb edge, factory edge, to put my next piece against. So I'll minimize the gap between the pieces.
Here I'm just ripping down the plywood to the proper lengths to go up between the roof trusses. Once I rip everything down, then I take my jigsaw and start notching out for the metal tubing along the trusses.
Okay, so in my previous video, I installed all the branch circuit wiring. I only did the Romex, I didn't do anything else. So I just got everything roughed in. Now, as I'm installing the plywood ceiling, I'm going to have to make penetrations through the 1/2-inch plywood and then feed the Romex through it. So in this situation, I've got a faux beam that's going to be installed over the metal bottom cord of the truss. So I'm going to be using 3/4-inch furring strips, and then the faux beam itself will be made out of 3-inch material. So what I did is I just used just a 2x4, which gave me the 1.5-inch clearance that I needed to give me the proper spacing away from the metal truss. And then I took just a blank box and marked the center location of the box, and then drilled a hole through the plywood ceiling, and then I fed my Romex through those holes. This way, when I do come back and install the faux beam, the box will just sit flush up against the beam, and it won't be as visible. Okay, so let me give you a quick tour of where I'm at right now as far as installing the plywood ceiling. I've got roughly 12 sheets of plywood up, and I'm about halfway done, and I just wanted to give you just an overview of where I'm at so far. So I've basically got the middle portion of the ceiling almost done. I still have one row on this side to install all the way down, and that will finish up the flat portion of the ceiling, and then all I'll be left with is the vaulted portion of the ceiling, which is along this side, both sides, both the north and the south walls. And that should be a lot easier installation because we're drilling to the bottom cord of the truss to install these pieces of plywood. So it'll be much easier than having to get up into. All right, so now let me go above the ceiling and kind of show you what it looks like from up above. Okay, so this is up above. There's not a lot of space up here. I had thought about maybe installing some bad insulation up here. But it's a pretty tight fit, and if I put bad insulation, it's pretty much going to take up the whole attic space. I might come back at a later date and install an attic access panel, and then maybe get up here and install some blown insulation or bad insulation. But I'm just gonna, for right now, wait till I get the Mr. Cool unit installed and wait till this summer and see how it cools. If I feel like I need it then I'll come back and do it. But that's pretty much how it looks like from up in the attic space. Okay, so I've completed the installation of all the 1/2-inch plywood on the ceiling, at least the flat portion of the ceiling. So let me go ahead and show you that now. So now we're going to have to, so now I'm going to start installing the 1/2-inch plywood on the vaulted portion of the ceiling. And let me go ahead and show you what that looks like. So you can still see the insulation. This is the part that's vaulted that I haven't installed any 1/2-inch plywood on yet. On this portion, we're going to be screwing it from the bottom. So you are going to be able to see the screw holes, which I'll come back and cover with wood putty. And we're just going to be installing panels. So there'll be a joint at every truss location all the way down this side. And of course we'll have to notch out where the diagonal bracing attaches to the vaulted part. I'm going to have to notch out for that. And what's going to happen is the diagonal brace will have a faux beam around it, and then there'll also be a faux beam on the flat portion of the ceiling as well. On the vaulted portion, I'll probably come back and have to put some piece of just wood trim, since that's where our joints are going to be. So I'll probably just come back and rip a piece of wood the same width as the faux beams, and then stain it all the same color so it will blend in. All right, so let's get started installing some plywood. Okay, so I got the first two ceiling panels on the vaulted ceiling installed, and I just wanted to give you a look of what it looks like installed, and then go over the process of how I install one panel, and then it's just, you know, rinse and repeat all the way down the wall. So let me go ahead and show you the first two panels that I installed. So at the angle where the flat roof meets the vaulted roof, I am going to go back and put a piece of trim in that joint to just hide that joint. But now that I've got two installed, I can start installing the rest, and let me show you how that goes. Okay, so I took a full sheet of 1/2-inch plywood. My length, finished length, is 45 inches. So what I did is I just ripped it at 46 inches just with a skill saw, no track, no nothing. And then I'm going to take and cut it to the finished dimension, 45, on the table saw. So I did a rough cut at 46 with the skill saw, and now I'm going to do a finished cut at 45 on the table. Okay, one thing to remember, once you rip or cross-cut a piece of plywood, now you have one finished factory edge and a non-factory edge. So the edge I cut with the skill saw is not plumb or anything. So most plywood comes with markings just spray painted on the side of the plywood, which which indicates that that's the factory edge. So you just want to make sure when you rip it on the table saw that you have the factory edge up against your fence, and the unfinished edge, which you just ripped with the skill saw, on the opposite side. And that's the end that you're going to be cutting off and putting another factory edge on that side of the plywood.
So here I'm just ripping the plywood down to size, making sure that the factory edge is up against the fence, and I'm just trimming off that 1-inch side that is not plumb and not a factory edge.
Okay, so the next thing I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to notch out for where the bottom cord of the truss meets the other truss. So you can see the detail there. That's at the top, So I've got to cut an 1.25 inch by 1.25 inch notch in the top of the panel, and then where the diagonal brace connects to the truss, I've got to cut out a 4.25 by 1.25 inch notch. And I just use a jigsaw to cut that out. And that's it. I put 3 screws on each side, and they're screwed directly into the metal truss, so there shouldn't be any problems with those, with the number of fasteners. And that's it. So now you just rinse and repeat all the way down the wall, which is what I'm about to do. This is going to wrap up the video for installing a plywood ceiling in a metal building. I hope this video was helpful. I hope it helps you in your project. Get out there, create, build, and inspire, and as always, pay it forward. Hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell. This is Rick from the Engrave Workshop, signing out. I'll see you next week.